Hello and welcome to this, our latest edition of Path to Power, our last one that we're recording just before Christmas. So a very happy Christmas to you from me, Matt Cooper.
And from me, Ivan Yates.
So let's talk about the government formation, which will run on, well, it'll be restarting, I think, just after Christmas. Everyone is going on a little bit of a Christmas break at present, so the talks are stalling. But we want to go back to the return of the Dáil last Wednesday to the election of Ceann Comhairle. And as Ivan had predicted here, first to do so, Verona Murphy got the gig. And this was all a stitch-up, wasn't it? Part of the independence. But is this appropriate? Because Verona Murphy was tossed out of Fine Gael in 2019. Well, they sort of withdrew the support for her in the by-election in which she came third. Then they deselected her for the general election. And Simon Harris, of all people, was to the forefront in saying that she wasn't a suitable person because she had made comments about refugees. She had suggested that ISIS were shipping people into the country to destabilize, these sort of things that have become popular and fashionable since these sort of anti-immigration tropes. So if she was unacceptable to be a candidate for Fine Gael in the 2020 general election, how on earth can she be acceptable now as Ceann Comhairle?
Well, you see, the first principle of politics, whether it's office politics and Today FM, the first principle of politics, it's about obtaining power and using it. That's what politics is about. Like, you can dress it up whatever way you like. And in the real world, when you go beyond the maze of moralizers and wade your way into the real world, you will find that actually lots of novice politicians, I did it myself in my 20s. If I had the choice of words again, I would say it differently. And it's inexperience. Verona Murphy is now a different person. And I think time will tell whether she makes a good Ceann Comhairle or not.
Sorry, hold on. What do you mean she's a different person? People, when they get to a certain stage in life, they only change by increments. They don't change dramatically.
Well, put it like this. She's well able to defend herself. But what I'm trying to say is comments made when she was a raw recruit and relating to that, that was all, I think, in 2019. We're now 5 years later. She topped the poll in Wexford. And, we can have the same discussion. I see lots of the usual columnists out moralising about Michael Lowry at the moment. And, oh, by the way, someone said to me, do you know what Matt's nickname is within the media circles? Do you know what your nickname is? And he's called Matt GPO Cooper. And I said, why the GPO? He said, there's more columns in Matt than there is in the GPO. He can do them at will. And there was someone who was a fan of yours. So anyway, the point I'm making is this. All the columnists now are talking about the morals, whereas actually what the country needs is a strong, stable government that will deliver this country, and just a little bit of whataboutery. And we can discuss this in more detail. Germany's government has collapsed this week, and German economic output is down 15% on what it was a decade ago. The French government collapsed last week, and they're now trying to form another government, and there's paralysis, and they've a whopping deficit. Here in Ireland, we have run our affairs a little bit better, and therefore what we want to do is continue to do that. By God, there's room for improvement in a number of fronts, but at the end of the day, what was up for grabs this week was, who should we elect as Ceann Comhairle? And so there's a number of really significant moving parts as far as I'm concerned when we get past the moral maze.
So you keep using the word moral as if it's something
virtue signalling,
lacking.
Woke. We're like what political correctness.
What's your problem with morals?
No. My problem is if it gets in the way of getting business done, it is actually just preaching nonsense. Like what I'm saying is the trains have to run on time. We have to get budgets and departments. Look at America in paralysis. They can't have their budget approved.
Okay, but hold on. And you made reference, and we have discussed Michael Lowry in recent editions, and I've made it quite clear as well about how the tribunal findings, the Moriarty report, talk about how he profoundly corrupted the process that was involved, which could leave the state still very liable to significant damages. I've also made reference to the fact that he has made tax settlements, having been caught up by the revenue commissioners. Also that he was convicted in the courts in 2018 in relation to the keeping of accounts, and how Micheál Martin had back in 2011 demanded that he resign as a politician. And here we are again. This is the man who seems to be the kingmaker in relation to Verona Murphy becoming the Ceann Comhairle and the subsequent government formation. So we're supposed to put all of that aside. If we put all of that aside, and we say, well, what Verona Murphy said back in 2019, we'll give her a pass on it because she was inexperienced and she's a different person now. If that's the case, then why won't Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael talk to Sinn Féin about going into government? Because the excuse that Simon Harris is giving in relation to Verona Murphy is that she has been elected with a big number of votes. The people of Wexford have decided. The same excuse has been given for Michael Lowry, that the people of Tipperary consistently re-elect him. Well, if that's the case, then doesn't Sinn Féin have a point when it argues that it's entitled to enter into conversation with Fianna Fáil, should be treated seriously as a potential partner, given that it has 2 more seats than Fine Gael? So suddenly morality comes back into play, does it?
No, it's not. The reason why Sinn Féin are not part of government talks is their whole mandate was to get rid of 100 years of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. That was their mandate. So therefore you have a situation whereby the people who won had a different mandate. And so therefore, in policy terms and so on, but there's nothing exclusionary about anyone in the Dáil. Anyone who gets elected has an absolute validity to form part of a government.
Yeah, but then if you go back to 2020, prior to the 2020 general election, Micheál Martin said specifically he would not enter coalition with Fine Gael. You know, that it was getting Fine Gael out of government. He kept Fine Gael in government when he negotiated.
He did.
So
he changed his mind about that.
So why not change your mind about Sinn Féin? Given that, all right, Sinn Féin campaigned on the basis of ending 100 years, but they've made it quite clear since the general election that not with Fine Gael, but they would be happy to talk to Fianna Fáil, and Fianna Fáil wouldn't even entertain conversation with them.
I think it's an esoteric exercise, but I think the policy gulf in relation to the enterprise economy, in relation to tax and spend and so many things are just completely different. There are things which they might agree on, like United Ireland or other things. And I have said to you repeatedly that one day I would not rule out FF and SF under another leader getting together. But can we get back to the real world?
Another leader for Fianna Fáil?
Yes. So
why do you keep telling me get back to the real world?
The real world?
I am talking about the real world.
The real world.
And you seem to think morality does not exist in the real world.
Sorry, we've gone through, since September, October and November, the first part of a process which was a campaign and a contest for votes and seats. We are now entering the second phase, which is a contest for the exercise of power and the formation of a government. And what I'm going to tell you is, in my opinion, we have seen a masterclass from Micheál Martin this week in the way he handled the whole Ceann Comhairle thing and the way he is prospectively putting this government together. And some credit to Simon Harris. And they have simply danced rings around their political opponents, culminating in the fact that when your beloved Mary Lou was proposed for Taoiseach, she got the priceless total of 44 votes in favour and 110 votes against. So you have to ask the question, since their landslide of the most popular party in 2020, how much progress have they made in the pursuit of power?
Well, I've been saying that on this podcast. And in fact, I was probably tougher than you were in the immediate aftermath, that this was a failure for Sinn Féin. But actually, I want to go back to the Ceann Comhairle.
But I have to go to, because I just want to say this, I just want to continue on the theme of putting this government together. So what actually happened, and this is really instructive. So Micheál comes back from his Foreign Affairs Council on Monday evening, and he works the phones, and he rings all the sort of problematic people who are not in the inner circle and says, look, Ceann Comhairle vote is coming up. We have a parliamentary party meeting at 12 noon on Tuesday. Look, this is my line. We have a difficult job of herding cats, which is about 8 independents, regional independents. We have Lowry in train, and they have suggested that for the Dáil arithmetic not to affect our total of FFFG of 86, that Verona would be a credible candidate. She's interested in the post, and they're starting a campaign to get her on board. These are the reasons why I'm thinking we should support her. One, it will greatly facilitate a deal with the regional independents, FF and FG. By the way, I've already made a lot of progress with FG on the rotation, on the term of government and all the rest of it. And therefore, if you want the party to be in power, if you want it to be the biggest party in the government, I think we should do this. It makes sense. And then what happens? So then we have, first of all, someone who really should know better because he's talked himself out of the Dáil once already. In 2019, Malcolm Byrne won a seat, and he's a very bright guy and could be...
He won the by-election.
Yeah, in Wexford.
And I think ended up as one of the most short-lived TDs of all time, didn't he?
It's a rare feat that 6 months later you lost your seat because you have all the high profile and recency bias and so on. So he was the main proponent behind John McGuinness's candidacy, and basically, in spite of the leader saying this is our party strategy, in spite of the fact that it looked like being a viable strategy that it was going to work, they pursue John McGuinness's campaign. Even worse. So I don't think he's done his prospects of being a minister any good at all.
I was just about to say, he might have had a shot at being a junior minister.
That's my point.
And he's blown it up.
Absolutely. Like, how was he acting in his own best interest? And he went on the plinth to attack Verona as well.
Yeah, but see, that actually made me wonder. I mean, like, his enmity towards Verona Murphy runs deep.
Yeah, but it clouded his judgment as to what was in his best interest and his party's best. Then we move on to Ceann Comhairle. I have never seen such a political self-assassination. He drowned in his own bombast. And his argument was that only he could continue with Dáil reform and the independence of the Dáil from the formation of the government.
This from a man who had said prior to the election that he didn't want to go be in Ceann Comhairle again. But people went to him apparently. People went to him and asked him would he stand again. He didn't get very many votes, did he?
Well, the point about it is he ended up with 42 votes, and most of those were the Michael Healy raised, the independents, people he'd been on junkets with and all that good stuff. But the point is, at the end of the day, if his point was the independence of the Dáil, and if he wanted to be credible, he should have supported John McGuinness. He should have said, look, this isn't about me as a person.
But of course it was about him.
Exactly. It was in totally self-serving nonsense. And you know...
But in fairness, if 255 grand a year and a driver and various other perks and stuff...
8 years already done.
Yeah, you'd want to be hanging on to a gig like that, wouldn't you?
Speak for yourself. I tend to look to the higher-minded principles of democracy.
Suddenly you're taking the high moral ground. Exactly. I love this.
So the point I'm making is those two had a very bad week. It was a really, really good week for... But hold on, I want to come back on the Ceann Comhairle thing. What about the allegations though, that against Verona Murphy from Malcolm Byrne and others, you know, that she had been involved in smearing people, I think would be fair to say, description of it, in Wexford. And then also, what about other things that have come up in relation to her? I mean, I know damn well how you're going to respond to this, but that she's not fluent in Irish, which should be a requirement given the nature of the position. She said she'll try and remedy that.
Easier said than done, okay? So
well, Joe McHugh was appointed, the Gaeltacht minister, and he actually worked very hard to help his fluency. Like, it's not irredeemable, that.
No, so that was the Irish language
As a great Gaelgo yourself, anyway.
I'm not, far from it. But also the fact that she seems to think that she can continue to be a constituency politician. And she's talking about her team in Wexford doing constituency work, and she's talking about using her position to gain access to ministers. I mean, this is not what the Ceann Comhairle's position is supposed to be about.
Put it like this, I interacted with her on that point because I actually believed the Ceann Comhairle is quite a separate role and is outside of politics and above politics, and for that reason they're not subject to election in the next election. Apparently Ceann Comhairle kept his constituency office open. I think she will not be in a position to give out about things the way she normally would, to lobby, to criticise. She is not going to be in that...
Will she be able to bite her tongue? We both got to know Verona Murphy when we were presenting the Tonight Show, and she came to prominence from the Irish Road Haulers Association, and she was a regular guest on our TV show and on our respective radio shows. And, you know, she's definitely feisty and she's opinionated. And those aren't necessarily qualities that you associate with somebody. I don't know if you saw the video of it went around again this week. The infamous John O'Donoghue. Just after you had left the Dáil, John O'Donoghue became Ceann Comhairle in 2002. And the job did not suit him temperamentally.
Yeah.
And there's the video going around of him on his very second day getting incandescent with Arthur Morgan of Sinn Féin and Michael Ring, who he was trying to tell. And he's up and he's roaring with the red head on him.
Yeah.
Roaring and shouting. And it didn't get much better for John. And as we all know, he enjoyed the perks of being Ceann Comhairle and sort of when he was the foreign travel that was involved in the chauffeurs and the rest of it. But the actual day-to-day business of actually having to manage to herd the cats, as you described it, it drove him mad. Will Verona go the same way?
Well, put it like this. I'm not here to defend Verona. I mean, Verona's well able to defend herself, but she will have to recalibrate her persona, and it is a different job, and I just think she's very hardworking, she's very energetic. I think she'll actually bring some change, and a little bit of gossip I heard, not from her, but from someone else. So they're really overcrowded within the environs of Leinster House.
Because of all the new TDs.
Yeah, 14 new TDs. So they just came up with the brainwave, not her predecessors, and the people who run the house, to shift all the media out. There's over 100 accredited journalists. You see them up on the gallery there.
Yeah.
So they said, look, we've got to cannibalise these offices for TDs. And would you believe it? All of them, more or less, reluctantly agreed, except one very esteemed political editor who should, for the moment, remain nameless. But put it like this, I can tell you how this is going to end up. They'll all be fecked out. and
where are they going to go?
I don't know, but the TDs have to get their offices. There's a little bit of kind of primacy of parliamentarians over hacks. So let's
take a break. We need to take a break, and we need to come back then, and we'll discuss more in relation.
And who's going to be in the cabinet?
And the government formation. All of that to come after this short break. Welcome back to the second part of this week's edition of Path to Power. We've been talking about the selection of Ceann Comhairle. Actually, before we get to the government formation, I think Angus O'Snuddig managed to pick up more votes to be Ceann Comhairle, didn't he, than Mary Lou MacDonald to be Taoiseach.
Yeah.
He made a speech in which he tried, in fairness to him, to reach out to everybody. He said, look, I may have political differences, but I've been away on a lot of trips and I've got to... It was a bit stumbling. I discovered afterwards, Miriam Lord wrote in the Irish Times afterwards, that apparently he wasn't in the best of shape because he'd been at the Pogues in the Three Arena the night before. And I was thinking, well, if you're coming in to make a pitch to be a very, very important job like this, you want to be in the full of your health. But I suppose he knew at that stage, when he went off to enjoy himself at the Pogues, that it wasn't going to happen for him, that it was a done deal for Verona.
Yeah. So beyond the Ceann Comhairle, a couple of interesting things happened. So there is a time limit on which you can form a technical group. So we've had a lot of focus on what I call the herding of cats, which is the regional group. So Sean Kenny, Michael Lowry, Noel Grealish, Marion Harkin, Barry Heenahan, Kevin Boxer-Moore, Verona Murphy and Gillian O'Toole. Now, there's a lot going on that, because there is the Evo stick of the next government. How credible is it? So I've a lot to say about each of them have separate agendas. And it's almost like I did an after dinner speaking gig for the 220 Texaco forecourt suppliers. And I actually found they didn't have that much in common. One was in Carrickmacross and the other was in Killorglin, but the same with the regional independents. They are very much sole traders under a flag of convenience. But just before I get on to how those cats are being herded so well by Michael Lowry, is that another independent technical group was formed. And that is Independent Ireland, which is their TDs for Michael Collins, Michael Fitzmaurice, Richard Donoghue and Ken Flynn, who has been added to that group to give them speaking rights and priority question is Paul Gogarty, interesting, and the two Healy Rays. So I hear they had a terrific meeting with Micheál Martin.
So did I.
The Kerry package has got bells, whistles and icing on the cake, and that is going really well.
That was one of the things I was going to bring up with you. I'd actually heard that as well, which effectively means that although they will not be part of any official pact that the Michael Lowry group actually has, but the government is going to know that it's got other independents in the bag as well.
No, but this is stitched in a deal for the MTU, the Munster Technical University, package for Kerry, package for Tralee Hospital, package for ports, harbours, all that kind of good stuff. And that's only for, starters. But the interesting thing is, with all these musical chairs of people going into groups, who has Mr. Billy no mates? Who's ended up in no group at all?
Owen Hayes?
No, it's other name. Other name. Who's looking to go back as the black sheep? No, Matty McGrath has ended up in no group. Like, what did he do to offend them? Apparently, he's driven them all mad, coming in with prepared written scripts. I don't know who's writing them, but put it like this:
he has a very active press officer who sends out stuff on a regular basis.
You find out who your friends are when they reset the balls. Now, I want to talk about the herding of the cats.
Yeah, but hold on, just before we get to that, I thought it was rather. Well, I wouldn't say touching, but it was notable to see the sketch writers writing about the new TD for the Social Democrats, elected TD in Dublin Bay South, being a lonely figure on the independent benches, Owen Hayes, and various people going to actually talk to him, like Micheál Martin apparently welcomed him into the Dáil.
Smart move, yeah.
Absolutely.
Making eyes at him, yeah.
I think there was only one of the Social Democrats who was observed in the Dáil chamber going to Liam Quaid.
Yeah. Cork East.
And he went and apparently shook hands and said hello.
He's a psychologist. He does a lot of therapy. So he'd probably be a good person to speak to.
Can you imagine being in that situation? I mean, I know he made the rod for his own back, but, the situation that he's elected in these circumstances, he's there, and suddenly he's cast into the wilderness, suspended before he even takes
there is
up
a review facing expulsion.
Yeah.
That's what they've said this October.
Oh, I know.
So it's not over yet.
No. I mean, I would have thought that, the odds would be, if you were gambling, you'd be saying he's going to get the boot. But my God, what do you mean? That's a difficult work environment to go into, isn't it?
We dealt with him last week, so now
you've no sympathy for him.
Well, just he's not part of where the story's at. So where the story is at is the 15 members of cabinet. Now, I've been speaking to both the Indos, the regional independents, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and the one thing that's agreed is that Fianna Fáil will get 8. Now, this is very interesting because with Donnelly gone, that's 2 more plus Donnelly is 3. I hear McConnell is in real jeopardy, so that could be 4 vacancies. So I have names for you in due course, but I want to come back to the configuration first. Everyone else is saying 8, 6 and 1, the 6 being Fine Gael. Fine Gael are insisting the figure is 7.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, and that there's 3 super juniors, and that goes each of 3 ways. 1 super junior for Fianna Fáil, 1 super junior for Fine Gael, and 1 for the independent group. So
with the right to sit at the cabinet table, but not vote.
And what they're saying is there isn't a cabinet post, but we could give 3 junior ministers, including 1 super junior. Now, this is actually where the axis of negotiation is going to be. And this is why actually Lowry is an able dealer from this point of view, because what they'll do is they'll get all the programme for government agreed, all the policy stuff, and they leave. And you see, when you're negotiating, you have a deal, Matt, and then I take the deal away from you. But just one little thing, which will be the cabinet minister. And that is kind of, once you have it in your head, I have this over the line, you will actually concede in a negotiation.
But didn't putting Verona Murphy in as Ceann Comhairle reduce the pressure on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to give a cabinet seat to the independents?
That would have been...
Was that not part of the deal?
No, it's not part of the deal. What part of the deal was, this is the foreplay that, facilitates consummation, right? It's not part of the deal. That's the structure on one side. The other side is saying, but you already got Verona. So it's these kind of half understandings that are the basis of negotiation. So let's look at it from a couple of points of view. So we'll get into the cats. So the cats, when you speak to them, I say, well, look, and I went to the library in Enniscorthy and got a copy of In Bed with the Blue Shirts, just to, Shane Ross's book, to try and retrace exactly what happened. And I lost the will to live after the first chapter, but I will read it over Christmas. But the point I'm trying to make is this. The principle that was established within the independent group, so there's 8 members, who gets the gig? Because there's only 3 junior ministers. And apparently they're not interested in committee chairs. So leaving aside constituency deals...
Why are they not interested in committee chairs, given that there's an extra payment on top of the TD salary?
And it's pensionable. Yeah. And it's pensionable. I put it like this, they might end up. And then there's also the question of the Taoiseach's 11. Would Matty Shanahan or Cathal Berry be a Senate appointment? So there's a lot of moving parts there. But basically, their ask would be, give us all a junior minister. So you have Boxer saying, I'm demanding any part of a deal, I'll have to get a junior ministry. So what happened previously was the criteria on which, who do you select from the 8 to be the 3? Long service, right? Seniority, right? So on that reckoning, 1 is Canny, 2 is Grealish. Lowry would be, but Lowry doesn't want a job.
What about Marion Harkin?
No, but you see, she was off in Europe.
Okay.
Right? So she actually doesn't have long service.
European service doesn't count.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
But hold on, then what about the likes of Boxer Moran losing his seat and coming back, and Sean Canny?
Yeah, so the point I'm making is that Lowry's biggest challenge, and apparently he's well able to tell him to shut up at the meetings, you know what I mean? This is the way the law is, and so on. And this is the type of guy that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil want in the room, someone who can carry a bit of weight. He'll tell them, look, this is all we can achieve realistically or whatever. So it's still in play whether they get a cabinet minister or just a super junior, and 2, they will get 3 posts in government. So all that is really where the axis is. And I think that, like someone said to me, who's Lowry working for? Is he working for the government or is he working for the independents? And I thought, well, that's a great start. Anyway. So the point...
I'm sorry, if he's working for the government, is he more inclined
No, he's working for the independents. He's working for the independents.
But is he more inclined towards Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil these days?
Oh, sorry, he's a pragmatic power broker. He's agnostic on all these matters, but he would have spheres of influence.
Who's he got a better relationship with, Micheál Martin or Simon Harris?
Well, I actually think, watching the last week, these guys are really working in like you're dealing with a combo now of Simon and Micheál. They are working in lockstep. Look, if you look at the way they work their respective parliamentary parties with different arguments, Harris was able to deploy the argument, look, if Fine Gael is to get a seat in Wexford, we need Verona off the pitch. And there was different things thrown into it. So the fact of the matter is they are doing a 2-hand reel. And they're also got another common problem, which is that whether it's the 8 or whether it's the 6 or +1, they have more applicants for cabinet positions than they have positions, which is really fascinating.
I mean, and let's talk about Fine Gael's side of it first, because my understanding is that there were quite a few people in Fine Gael quite fed up with the idea that Harris so quickly went with the idea of Verona Murphy as Ceann Comhairle. It was an easy one for Fianna Fáil. And an easy one enough to say, even despite the fact John McGuinness and Sean O'Farrell kicking up, Micheál Martin in control of his parliamentary party was able to push it through.
Even though the 21 votes for McGuinness was on the high side, in my opinion, it was the signs of a future rebellion there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a secret vote and all the rest of it and stuff. But
you can't trust the bastards, but anyway, carry on.
but the point in
I always believe in supervised votes and photographed votes.
Can you believe that somebody spoiled their vote?
Yeah, apparently there was one very senior minister showing Verona photographs of their ballot paper and how they voted for her. And apparently there was 3 photographs on the circuit, so they didn't know whose actual ballot paper it was.
Right. Anyway, Simon Harris, I'm told that there was quite a lot of concern amongst Fine Gael people about the way that he was giving this deal to Verona Murphy. So I don't know, he's going to have a lot of noses potentially out of joint. I mean, there's speculation now that he's thinking of putting Helen McEntee into enterprise and employment. I mean, what sense does that make when Peter Burke was only promoted to the position 6 months ago? Is Peter Burke going to be demoted or moved elsewhere after only 6 or 7 months in the job?
So, of the Fine Gael 6, this is my best intel. There are 3 certainties. Simon himself, the deputy leader, Helen, and she, because of Heather Humphreys going, that's the difference. She has moved up a slot beyond Pete. Like we discussed how maybe she wasn't going to be reappointed to justice when Harris took over first, but needs must. She is now deputy leader, so she has dibs on it. And the bold Pascal. Now I have to tip my hat to Pascal, because Leo is gone, Simon's gone, the boys aren't back in town, and yet he has ended up, because the Taoiseach and the Minister for Finance are different parties, he is going to be the next Minister for Finance, and Jack will go to public expenditure.
I said that to you last week.
No, but the point is this. Like, Pascal has a perfect 3 years, which is the period for which it rotates again, to actually go find, he didn't get the IMF job, to go find a proper job eventually, because he will have done 17 years in Cabinet, which is quite extraordinary.
No, he came into Cabinet in 2014, didn't he? He was a junior minister first.
But by 2027, he'll have done, yeah. So
13 years,
So they're the three bankers, right? And so next up is highly probable, almost certain, is Peter Burke, for the reason you said, and so on. Okay? So that's 4. Now there's only 2 left.
Patrick O'Donovan must be feeling a little bit squeaky bum time.
Well, put it like this. A lot of talk about Patrick. The situation, Hildegard is also in that same situation. Jennifer McNeill, Carol McNeill is in that situation.
Neil Richmond.
Alan Dillon. And basically, what's the fly in the ointment is that I'm told that Martin Hayden, on the basis of long service and on the basis that Fine Gael want agriculture back, and that Micheál is quite happy to sacrifice McConaughey in agriculture, not apparently over-impressed by that 4-year stint. So what I'm told is that Martin Hayden will be the next Minister for Agriculture, which means that he's actually... So now we have 3 plus. So we have 5 certs. 5 certs. Martin. So now we're a woman short.
The 5 are Simon Harris...
Helen
McEntee, Pascal Donoghue,
Martin Hayden, and Peter Burke. Yeah.
So then it has to be a woman.
Yeah.
So it's either then going to be either Jennifer Carroll McNeill or Hildegard Naughton.
Methinks, yes. That is that. Put it like this.
If it's only 6.
Yeah.
If it's 7, it's both of them.
Okay. And so therefore, where does that leave Patrick O'Donovan? Or where does that leave anyone in Munster? Like, you can already get the violin out for Munster. Cork, how can you do this to us? You know what I mean? All that preciousness. So, if, in my opinion, there is one cabinet member, which I'm not saying is guaranteed, it will be Sean Canny, I think. Noel Grealish is in the frame. Now, we then move to Fianna Fáil. So Fianna Fáil have a few more cards to play. So first of all, you have Micheál as a cert, Jack as a cert, deputy leader. Dara O'Brien is moving to justice, I hear, right? First of all, the picture now is quite clear to me that when Micheál goes into the sunset in 3 years' time, the 2 candidates will both be Dublin candidates.
Jack Chambers and Dara O'Brien.
Exactly. And he wants to have another heavyweight portfolio. He's done his bit on housing, and he's going to take on now. Fianna Fáil have big reform proposals for justice in terms of bringing migration into a new Department of Domestic Affairs.
So this means Jim O'Callaghan is never going to make it to the Department of Justice.
What I'm trying to do is deal with the certs first. So the 4 certs are Micheál, Jack, Dara O'Brien and Norma Foley, right? She's a cert.
Will she stay in education?
I'll put it like this, probably not. You know, put it like this, I don't know is the answer to that question.
Will she get rural affairs? Because if she was to get rural affairs, hold on, is she going to be then making all sorts of announcements, but in Kerry, all of the benefit goes to the Healy Rays?
Let me tell you about rural affairs. So rural affairs was a makey-up department to give Ring a cabinet position back in the day. And that was fine. It has turned into the most coveted department. Someone said to me, Fine Gael, because Heather Humphreys was social protection and rural affairs, they will under no circumstances let the grip on that rural affairs department go out of there. For this reason, I said, but it's a non-event department. It has the biggest political slush fund of grants to be given to communities, which is a real lightning rod for local constituency TDs, and is the most highly politicised pot of money. So basically what I'm saying there is, but I'm hearing that local government may come out of housing and heritage and planning and all of that from the customers, and local government will be put into rural affairs. That's a structural point.
Make some sense, although that said, that means local government for Dublin goes into the Department for Rural Affairs and for Cork. and for Galway. And anyway, go on.
Okay, so of the 8, the 4 certs are Micheál, Jack, Dara and Norma. Now we get into, okay, I think it's a straight shootout between McConnell Og and Dara Calleary.
I think Dara Calleary's got to get promoted.
Yeah, I think Dara Calleary could end up Minister for Housing. I just have that feeling that he could well be. But put it like this, they'll only reappoint him if it's a tough job that needs, an experienced pair of hands, right?
But it is. Housing is going to be possibly the key portfolio.
Totally. I totally agree. And it'll require, he'll need to roll up his sleeves. So now we've given 5 and there's 3 left. So my best tip, if I was making a book on this, the one I go short odds on is James Lawless, right? James Lawless, he got a second guy in, Naoise Carroll. He's in the right place. He has
in Kildare.
He is regarded as having a bit of bandwidth, which can't be said of everyone in the parliamentary parties. Okay. Next up, you have to have a second woman.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
so is it Mary Butler?
Mary Butler versus Niamh Smith is where it's at, I'm told. Now, this could be for the position of Chief Whip. So, Mary Butler, a long service, very hard working. Niamh Smith has Labour, she was chair committee of the media committee and so on. They kept their 2 seats there. Brendan Smith is going to retire next time. It needs a little bit of minding. There's a Sinn Féin threat there. So she's in the hunt, but there's one. And the other person that's in the hunt is James Brown, who is collating the manifesto and had quite a high profile as a junior justice minister. So that, in my view, are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 into 8. That's roughly where it's at. Now, there's one other...
Jim O'Callaghan.
Why do you keep coming back to Jim O'Callaghan? He's not on my list, I tell you. So the point is this, there's one other dark horse I want to throw in.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of promise was made, but given that Donnelly lost his seat, there is a suggestion that Dr. Martin Daly, a newly elected TD in Roscommon, who was president of the IMO, who is all sorts of medical, community practice, GPs, primary health care, is regarded. I think he'll get a job somewhere in the health department.
Well, could it be that if the health department moves to Fine Gael, and speculation has been, I see some newspapers were following up on speculation from this podcast of recent weeks, that Jennifer Carroll McNeil might be the type of strong person to go into Department of Health, is that Fianna Fáil would put Martin Daly in as junior minister to mark her.
See, the problem with Jennifer is the job she really wants is the top job, Harris's job. You got to be careful about these things. Do you know what I mean? You do not want to find, there's a rock on the road and you find a knife in your back. You understand me? So I don't know if she'll be going to, but if she's put in health, it'll be because of Angola. Do you understand me?
But as I said to you previously, the Department of Health does not stop people becoming the Taoiseach or the leader of the party.
Yeah.
Simon Harris, Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin, all of what they have in common is Department. Do you know, actually, if Labour had got the job or got into government, the word was that maybe Alan Kelly would have been sent into the Department of Health.
Yeah.
I believe he may be the most disappointed man. The Labour Party has let him down in so many ways. They let him down by dumping him as party leader, and now they've let him down by deciding that they don't want to go into talks.
Well, as you know, I'm a fan of Alan's.
They engaged apparently very seriously with Fianna Fáil in relation to
tell me what you heard.
I heard that they went in and that the meetings were very, very good and that they had an awful lot of policy documents which impressed the Fianna Fáil people. And Fianna Fáil thought that if Labour was in government, they would work well with them. But the problem was that they spotted straight off that this ain't going to work because the Labour Party is split.
Well, and the second reason is they would want what the Greens had, which was 3 cabinet positions and 3 junior ministers.
They might have settled for 2.
Well, put it like this. There's a split in the Labour Party. You've correctly identified there's trouble down the road for the Labour Party. But I thought it was so instructive because we talk about the left and lack of unity. So it was a real test. Sinn Féin put it up to them. Are you going to vote for Murphy? The Soc Dems abstained. Labour actually voted against her. And you know what People Before Profit did? Some of them voted for her, and Ruth Coppinger said under no circumstances they couldn't even keep their own flag together.
Actually,
talk about a crowd of amateurs. Please.
Funny enough, just the last thing in this, apparently within government circles as well, when I say government, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, they actually are coming to regard, they think that while the public might have a belief that the Soc Dems are soft left, that are actually far further left than the public actually realises.
But they are whatever you have in yourself. Like if they're talking to a Shinner or a People for Profit and they're looking for transfers, they'll give that impression. The other thing I just want to say, which is looming large in all of this that I was unaware of, was that, and there was a time with Bertie when he was looking at a particular EU presidency. Ireland has the presidency in the second half of 2026, July to December 2026, which is very much in the period that Micheál is Taoiseach. I think he is looking at strutting the stage as a very senior European global figure at that time, and everything is predicated towards that. And maybe in 27 then he'll decide about Micheál A taking over the seat and let Fianna Fáil go, and what job he'll look for or what job he could leverage on the international stage might be interesting. But I think that's his game plan. And you know what I love in a politician? You have to have a game plan. Like the Aegis who are running around this week, you know what? They had no game plan.
Okay, we need to take one more break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the big political controversy of the week, the one that was manufactured by Israel when it closed the embassy in Dublin and when it also made its outrageous allegations about Irish political leaders in Ireland being anti-Semitic. So that's something we're going to come back and discuss after this break. Welcome back to the final part of this week's Path to Power. By the way, we're going to be taking a break for a couple of weeks over the Christmas period. If you want to hear more of us, though, there will be subscription editions available to subscribers that will have been recorded for the Christmas period so that there will be more for you to enjoy, if enjoy is what you come here for. And we will then be back as normal early in January. So let's talk about the big political decision of the week by the Israelis. This performative nonsense on the part of the Israelis, which I suppose shows that Ireland has gotten under their skin a bit by being forthright and, dare I say, using the word that you were scoffing at earlier, moral in relation to its position on what Israel is doing in Palestine. And again, I'm always, concerned that you can have what you say in these podcasts or whatever cut up and misrepresented. But be clear, I think the majority of Irish people were appalled by what happened on October 7th, 2023, the terrorist attack by Hamas, a terrorist organisation, when it went and murdered so many Israeli people and kidnapped others. It was absolutely an outrageous act of terrorism, sponsored by the likes of Iran, whatever. So yes, absolutely condemn it, as our government did, which is something that is forgotten about by some of the Israeli commentary that there is since, utterly condemned consistently by our government. But by the same token, I think Irish people are outraged by what they've seen in the utterly disproportionate and disgraceful. It's hard to find the words to adequately describe the disgrace of what Israel has done in Gaza and indeed into Lebanon as well. The mass murder of innocent civilians under the guise of, sort of their collateral damage while they went after terrorists. It has been absolutely appalling. And Ireland has also been to the forefront in relation to the, recognition of Palestine, but also hopefully the new government will put the Occupied Territories Bill into place. But what the Israelis are doing is they do seem to be trying to undermine international opinion when it comes to Ireland. And there is the potential that this could have economic damage for Ireland, that there still remains perhaps ill-informed pro-Israeli lobby in the United States who will say that Ireland is not a friendly country to Israel, therefore American multinationals should not invest in Ireland. And that pressure might become even greater once the Occupied Territories Bill is passed. But I'd suggest to you, Ivan, that it is the moral and correct thing to do. And the Occupied Territories Bill refers to produce and goods coming out of land that Israel has stolen in its expansion in recent decades, and that if you do not honour international law, then you shouldn't be rewarded for that.
So we're going to slightly differ on this, because your position is absolutely justifiably principled. 45,000 people dead, 2.3 million people displaced, 17,000 kids dead. And, the attacks and the murder and the genocide has been indiscriminate, and there's no way the Israelis can be defended.
So they will take issue with the word genocide.
Okay.
Just to warn you.
That being said, So Ireland recognising Palestinian, Ireland having their embassy closed, Ireland doing the Occupied Territories Bill, which I understand the AG said is unenforceable in terms of actually getting produce and services and delineate geographically in the Middle East about that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm told that's the point of view.
I think they're going to reword it and rework it. And I think Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are actually committed to improving it and making it workable and bringing it into law.
Well, and we'll wait and see on that. But can I just sound this note of caution? While we all feel better with ourselves, we are not actually having any influence on the Israeli government. We haven't had any impact, along with Norway and Spain, and our role in the ICC and ICJ in terms of actually changing anything, changing America's support for the Israelis, changing the Israelis' own actions, the IDF and all of that. So therefore, you're not actually having any impact because we are a fairly small country, and while we all feel much better about ourselves and our high principles and all the rest of it, I understand last week that Peter Burke, as Minister for Enterprise and Employment, received strong representations from the US Chamber of Commerce saying that, lads, just be careful here, because the boardroom, whether you like it or not, whether it's excessive or improper Jewish influence in the boardrooms of the US, and this is, again, one of the points of difference why we are not going through the 40 billion of austerity that the UK, France and Germany are going through, is because of the boardrooms of America putting their IP here, their intellectual property here, putting their pharma here. And we're going to talk about in the subscription episode all the perfect storm clouds that are gathering in terms of Trump and all of that. We'll talk about that today. But to throw this in as well isn't a great time to be getting on the wrong side of these people. And I would just say, yes, by all means, have your principles, but I would just like a little bit of pragmatism in the way we approach this as regards how it will play out with foreign direct investment.
Well, then, should it be that what we do is that we should be looking for Europe to actually, that we should be doing it as part of the European Union? Although it does seem that, again, there is a reluctance on the part of many countries in Europe, I think because of collective guilt in continental Europe
over the Holocaust.
Of the Holocaust. That's I think that still plays psychologically a big part in.
I think in Germany, yes, but beyond that.
I know in other countries as well. And there's a reluctance to confront Israel for its wrongdoing, for fear of being accused of being anti-Semitic again. But I think actually what really, and this is the Netanyahu government, because this is not something you can say about all Israeli people, because there are many Israeli people who are horrified by what has been done in their name in Gaza.
Yeah. And Netanyahu has used the wars to prop up his position.
Yeah, for his own personal position. But, unfortunately, sometimes these things can get a little bit lost and they can be misrepresented. But I think the idea that Israeli government ministers can accuse Simon Harris of being anti-Semitic, or the Irish people of being anti-Semitic. There may be small pockets of anti-Semitism in Ireland. I think there's in Ireland there's sometimes a large degree of ignorance about the Holocaust and about the damage, the psychological damage it did to the survivors. There can often be at times as well a degree of naivety and sort of student union politics in relation to support for Palestine. Why don't a lot of these people get as worked up about what Saudi Arabia does in Yemen or what China does to the Uyghur people or whatever? But at the same time, having said all of that, what Israel is doing is wrong and it deserves to be called out for it. And what we can do, we should try and do via the European Union to put pressure on Israel to stop.
No ambiguity on that. Before we finish, I wanted to introduce one extraneous matter. Last week, I raised the issue of, will the programme for government deal with lack of accountability in the senior permanent government and the senior civil service, Bikegate and National Children's Hospital and all that kind of thing. I want to add a different point. I'm going to tell you this remarkable story. I'm sure as a busy daily broadcaster and multiple columns, GPO style, the situation is the reform of the management of the public service in terms of personnel management. I don't know if you heard this story, but this story was a new one on me. So I'm going to bring you to Mountjoy Prison, right? And there was a prison officer, and this gentleman basically decided in 2022, and absolutely one of conscience, that he wanted to join and defend Ukraine. But instead of going on leave of absence, he actually got his mates to fill in for him. And it wasn't actually noticed in the system that he was missing. But eventually, after a number of months, it was noticed he was missing, and he was still on full pay, right? So then it transpired that there was an RTE primetime programme in mid-September 2022, and here doesn't this bowled prison officer, who was subject to a mortar attack or something, was actually interviewed on the telly when he was supposed to be working in Mountjoy. So next thing, the prison authorities decided, well, really, we can't have this. You know, you're on full salary. You didn't get any leave of absence. Your mates covered up for you. And so it went to the Worker Relations Commission, where he was dismissed. And after many months of actually tracing him, right? And they wouldn't have traced him perhaps but for the primetime programme. And so I'm using this as an example of mismanagement in the public sector, no accountability. So there was a hearing in whereby he fought an unfair dismissal over this, and that no verdict has been given on that yet. But I'm asking you, Matt, in the real world, how can absentee employees not come up on any system? Like, how bizarre is our public service management? And we talk about value for, and this is a prison that's in crisis. There are people on the floor. And someone rang me last week and he said, Ivan, you're absolutely on the right track in terms of accountability. And I'll just say this, Albert Reynolds, much derided, right? He was told by the civil servants you couldn't introduce bus lanes. The preposterous notion that you get a bucket of white paint and mark out the roads. And he said, you know what? I'm just going to effing do it, right? And the same way that he got 20,000 phones delivered. Where is there in government someone who will say you cannot run a scale of system with 400,000 employees, with 70 billion expenditure, and not have proper management systems and accountability in place? Will someone please take responsibility for this on a can-do basis, and will they write it in the programme for government that they're going to do something about this? Am I wrong?
I think there's somebody thinking along those lines.
Okay.
And I think one of the things, legacy of Leo Varadkar, which may be addressed, was that Leo Varadkar was the government, the Taoiseach, who very much encouraged the idea of home working, and particularly in the COVID era. But I
call that Netflix washing and parenting.
Well,
and getting your golf handicap down.
I think you might find that there are senior politicians who are not too far away from your thinking. That's not the way it's expressed. But it could be that there's now a frustration that it's difficult to get meetings set up in the afternoon because people are suddenly sort of self-declaring flexi time. Yeah. Because they have to go and collect the kids from school.
And nobody's around on a Friday, yeah.
And
Mondays aren't great either.
Yeah. And this might be an issue that may actually be something that the next government will start focusing on.
I made a very serious point, which is this: in terms of accountability and public service management, there is time now, post-COVID and all that, for a reset. And this will not happen. The system will not heal itself. It needs a political master and driver of it, Albert Reynolds style.
Now, that said, we're going on holidays.
No. We're doing a subscription.
And I was going to put that caveat in,
Sorry.
yes.
So you are going to play golf and spend time with your family. I will continue to work.
You're going to go horse racing and spending
2 days. 2 days.
Anyway, we have 2 subscription editions. Well, in addition, you obviously
3 actually.
3, yeah, because there's the normal one that comes after this. But there will be 2 more weeks of subscription editions while we take a break from the main edition. They're all recorded in advance because we are taking a little bit of holiday. But if you want to get those, pathtopowerpodcast.com is where you can find details of how to subscribe. Some of you don't like the fact that I've been promoting the subscription edition, that I've been trying to sell it.
Well, we're getting more subscribers, in fairness, so you're doing something right.
So anyway, if you don't subscribe, and that, of course, there's no compulsion to subscribe, this is our opportunity to say thank you all very much for listening to us over the past year. We started in the first week in January, and we've had great fun throughout the year. There's a number of people I would like to thank as well for their work on this. People like Aidan Power and Tom McAuliffe, who are in the studio with us every week putting this together to make sure that it all goes properly up on the internet and wherever it is, be it Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get it. And also to people like Noel Kelly and Niamh Tyndall, Niamh McCormack, Andy McAnally, all of the team in NK Management. Thank you for all your help and assistance throughout the year as well. Anyone else you'd like to add, Ivan, as we say?
No, mostly myself.
Christmas
I want to thank for all the hours of work I put into producing that. But just to say, on the subscription, we're going to do a detailed review of 24, a detailed prospective view of what the economy holds for 25. So there'll be lots of material that is outside the scope of the kind of gossipy. And quite funnily, someone said to me, Ivan, have you seen the Bridgerton series? And I said, I have. And Lady Whistledown in her diaries. He said, this was the troop and all the gossip, and people said, now, for God's sake, Ivan, don't mention my name. You didn't hear this from me. I'll shoot you if you mention my name. Like, I actually feel like Lord Whistledown at this stage.
I haven't seen Bridgerton, so there you go. I can't make any comment. I just know there's a lot of bonking in it, so I don't know if you're doing that as well. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and a happy Christmas and a happy New Year to you all.